I believe every one of us has been created for a unique purpose and has been called to make a positive and meaningful impact with our lives. The key question is, will you accept the invitation and will you answer the call? We're extending our series on It's Not About You. And in the first three podcast episodes, we talked about three I's of identity and impact and influence. And based on some feedback we got from people who were listening to the podcast, we wanted to extend it to the other words that are on the graphic that we've been using for this series on It's Not About You. So we'll continue that and build those words out and talk about what they mean and go into more depth. And today I want to talk about calling because I think it's so important. And it's not a word that we use often, that we walk into work and say, I've got a calling to do this, or, things. We share that with friends. And if we do some journaling and do some deeper reflection on our lives and themes in our lives, we often can think about purpose and calling. And we want to make sure that those are not lofty words. They're words that are important. Because again, as I said in the intro, you were created for a unique purpose. And have been called to do things through the jobs you have had, the roles that you play in life, and to make a positive and meaningful impact with your lives. And that key question is important. And I want you to be thinking about that as we talk about what a calling truly is, to think about your life. And are you answering that call? Because we each have an invitation to do that. And we, just like a phone call or just like a text that comes in, we can answer that or we can decide not to answer that. And the implications are important because we can make a positive impact if we answer the call, but we may not make an impact, and the results may be devastating to people who are around us and who are looking for us to make that impact in their lives, whether they know it or not. And so I want to talk about calling today and give you a few thoughts on what I think a calling is. And sometimes we refer to it as that sweet spot of passion and purpose. Sweet spot of passion and purpose. So again, purpose being your why and calling being more the how and the what. And when you think about the sweet spot of that passion and purpose, things that you feel purposeful about, think that you've been put on this earth for, your why you've been created, and praying about that and seeking God's reflection on why did he create you? Why did he create me and that unique purpose that we have? And then understanding, what are we passionate about? I think a lot of times, especially as we age, we can think more about the word passion and get away from that. And maybe earlier in life, we had passions, we were passionate about things, but maybe we think dreams have passed us by or those passions have passed us by. But I think a passion is really what energizes you. And when you look at themes in your life, things that you're currently doing or things that you've done in the past, there are things that energize you. And when you find that alignment and that sweet spot of purpose and passion, that can result in a calling and really getting aligned with what your calling is in life. And so that's one way to think about calling. Another way to think about calling is the role that you play in the eternal story of God. And I think that's really important. We're playing a story, a little bitty story, in a bigger story of God. And he wants us to use that for his impact and his glory and his renown, as we talked about, those concepts of identity and impact and influence. And I really believe that in my life. When I try to get in touch with my calling, it's praying to him and thinking about, what is the story of God? What is the story that he's put me in this moment in time? And what role does he want me to play? And you have a role to play in that as well. Even if you're listening to this podcast and you're not a person of faith, you've been invited into that story, and there's an invitation that you can choose to accept. I chose to accept that invitation when I was 7. I didn't know everything that would happen in my life and transpire, but I made a decision to accept Jesus Christ into my life and to give my life and submit and surrender my life to him. And he has created an incredible amount of opportunities for me and an incredible journey that he's put me on. And you've had your own journey as well. And I think it's important to think about, again, what is the role that you're called to play, and not just the role that you have in life, like being maybe a mother or father or husband or wife or a business leader or an athlete, but to think about the role that you need to play in that eternal story and the things that you can bring every day to shine a light on his fame and his renown as well. I also wrote down that it's an impact that you were set apart for. A calling is an impact that you were set apart for. And again, I think sometimes we can think, well, other people have been set apart. Maybe somebody who's on a platform, maybe a pastor, maybe a CEO of a company, maybe it's the captain of a team if you're on a sports team. But you were set apart for an impact based on your unique talents and gifts and the moments and opportunities that you were given. And when you think about it that way, you don't think about yourself at an elite level, but you think about yourself at a distinctive level. And it's important to think that you've been set apart, and what have you been set apart for, and what is that impact in that role that you can step into to make a difference and a positive difference with your life. An invitation to make a positive difference in your life. We started with the intro, but that's another way we can think about calling. An invitation to make a positive difference with your life. And you can accept that invitation, or you can reject that invitation, or you can think that you don't have an invitation at all. But it exists. And every day and every moment in our lives, we have an opportunity to step in and accept that invitation. And then through our smile, through our words of encouragement, through the words that we choose to challenge others, to keep others accountable, we can help make a difference and an impact in the lives of other people. And it's a calling, and it's a special calling that you have. And you've been given a unique set of skills and talents and gifts that maybe I don't have or other people don't have. And so the key question again is, are you accepting that invitation? It's a recurring question that we're asking throughout this podcast to make sure that you're in tune with that invitation and that you're aligned with it and you accept it as well. I also wrote down another thought about calling. It's a mindset that transcends and permeates everything you do in every area of your life. Let me say that one more time because I think it's one of the most important points about calling in this podcast. A mindset that transcends and permeates everything you do in every area of your life. It's not tied to the job title that you have or the role that you play in life. And so we have to make sure that we understand that that calling has to be broad enough, and it is broad enough to transcend every area of our life and then permeate every area of our life as well. So it's not just tied to a specific job, and when that job is over, well, we don't have a calling and we don't know who we are. I've seen so many people tie their purpose to a job title, and then that role goes away, the job goes away, they get let go, the company falls apart, and they're lost as far as who they are. And as we talked about in our identity section of this podcast and this episode that we did on that, your identity is not tied to what you do. It's who you are and who God has created you to be. And so we've got to make sure that in the becoming process of who we are, and as we get more mature and have more moments and more opportunities, that we understand that that calling transcends every area of our life, but then it also permeates every area of our life as well. Sometimes I think we can think about calling as just in the spiritual realm or just at home or just in certain areas of our life, but it doesn't apply maybe at work or other areas of our life because that's just a transactional thing that we do to get a paycheck. But no, our jobs and every area of our life can be transformational for us and for the people that we're called to lead and we come in contact with every day if we allow our calling to permeate every area of our life. And I really want you to think about that this week. It is when you think about calling, and maybe you're very in tune with that, is it something that is not separated from different roles in your life, but it transcends all of those roles. It is not tied to that, but it transcends it, and that it also permeates everything that you do in every area of your life. Again, whether it's at home, in the community, or at work. And so that may be some work you need to do this week if you're in tune with your calling to make sure you make it broad enough and expand it enough and think about how that can translate into an area of life where you're not maybe using your gifts, talents, and strengths to fulfill that calling in a certain area of your life. And again, if you are not in tune with what that calling is, I think it's important to think about all the roles that you play and the jobs that you have and at home, at work, in the community as well. And look at certain themes. I think that's very helpful to help get in touch with your calling. As I've coached many people and I've gone through transitions in my life or had a deep reflective moment where I've thought about purpose and calling, I've asked the question that I often ask in blogs and with my coaching clients of this Ralph Waldo Emerson quote that's one of my favorite quotes. What has become clear since we last met? And I think it's important that we think about the data points in our lives. We think about drawing clarity in that and think about themes of, again, this idea of sweet spot of passion and purpose. And you can find themes when you think about the roles that you've played and maybe the opportunities that you've had to then get clarity on, hey, I've been called to do this. And you step into that and then you embrace that. And that's the last point about calling I wanted to make, is that calling is a moment that you must embrace. Calling is a moment that you must embrace. We've only got a short time in life, and I've had some people that have been friends, people that have been close to me over the last couple of years that have passed away, that have died. Fortunately for them, I know where they are in their journey of faith. They're in heaven, and they secured their eternity there. But it's important that we make sure that life is precious, that we only have a few moments in life to make a difference with our lives, and that calling is a moment you must embrace. We can't just kind of go through life and be transactional with the opportunities and minutes that we have. We've got to make the most of the moments in our lives. And as we always say on this podcast, that's key. That's key in our lives, to create moments that matter. And you've been given leadership, and you've been given influence in the roles that you play, the jobs that you have, and the people that you come in contact with. So I just want to encourage you to think about that. Life is not just about you. It's about other people, and it's about a calling that you've been given, and it's an opportunity to answer that call and step into the incredible invitation that you've been given, that God's given you with a purpose, with those talents, gifts, and moments. And let's go out and let's make the most of the moments in our life today.